give you an example. I have a client whose dad's an attorney, and he said, this is what you're going to do. You're going to be an attorney, make a lot of money, take over the firm. Well, at 36 years old, he doesn't want to be an attorney. And that was his chosen career path. And he's married, and he came to me for doing opiates. And he said, I hate being an attorney. I push papers, I look at things, and I hate it. He's a business attorney. And I said, what do you want to do? And he goes, I want to counsel people. I said, oh, okay. That's as far from being an attorney as it gets. So I said, what do you need to do? And he told me, and he was so excited, and he was going to plan his exit strategy. And his father said, you will not have an inheritance as soon as you do that. You're out. So his whole life purpose was not his. His dad hijacked his entire life purpose.
Hey, it's Rocky. Welcome to Richer Soul. Today's guest is Dr. Cali Estes, who is the addictions coach. You might be surprised at how many different kinds of addictions there are, and if you're actually an addict. Imagine it's 12 months from now, and you've achieved your major life goals. How does it feel to be in the best shape of your life? To wake up energized, excited about the day? To have great relationships and friends who support you and propel you forward? How does it feel to have an excess of money, to be able to make the choices you want? To be fearless and open to trying new adventures? Imagine being connected to the universe and it providing everything you desire. It's possible over time, and your past does not dictate your future. The only thing holding you back from this vision is you. It's time to take control of our thoughts and use them to our advantage. Welcome to Richer Soul, where we achieve our dreams and bring balance to health, wealth, relationships, time, and spirituality. If you have not had a chance to listen to episodes 1 through 9, I encourage you to go back and listen to the framework behind Richer Soul and how to create the life of your dreams. You can also find all the show notes for this episode at richersoul.com. While you're there, you can sign up for a monthly email where I share the best articles I read this month, let you know about upcoming episodes, and share a little wisdom. You can also listen to coaching calls under the Coaching Calls tab. I also share the most interesting articles I read every week on Facebook at facebook.com/Richer Soul. And there's also a Facebook group where you can ask questions and interact with other listeners. Today's quote: addiction is just a way of trying to get at something else, something bigger. Call it transcendence if you want, but it's like a rat in a maze. We all want the same thing. We all have this hole. The thing you want offers relief, but it's a trap. Tess Callahan. We're going to dig into that in today's show and how it affects all of us. Before we do, let's review last week's action step. Find the simplest thing and take action on it. What were you able to take action on? Was there something simple that you did? Because once you have one success, it breeds the next. Let me know what worked for you. I'd love to hear. I also want to share an excerpt from Epictetus. Wisdom depends on personal vigilance. Most people don't realize that both help and harm comes from within ourselves. Instead, they look to externals, mesmerized by appearances. Wise people, on the other hand, realize that we are the source of everything good or bad for us. They therefore don't resort to blaming and accusing others. They aren't driven to convince people they are worthy or special or distinguished. If wise people experience challenges, they look to themselves. If they are commended by others, they quietly smile to themselves, unmoved. If they are slandered, they don't feel the need to defend their name. But they go about their actions with vigilance, assuming that all is well, yet not perfectly secure. They harmonize their desires with life as it is and seek to avoid only the things that would prevent their ability to exercise their will properly. They exercise moderation in all affairs. And if they seem ignorant or unsophisticated, it is of no concern to them. They know that they only have to watch out for themselves and the direction of their own desires. Who do you blame when things don't go well? And what do you do to cope? Our guest today is going to talk about that subject and about some of the addictions we may not even realize we have. Dr. Cali Estes is an author and highly sought-after addiction therapist and life corporate coach who specializes in harm reduction and utilizes a holistic approach to treat addiction, as well as mental conditions holding her clients back from reaching their full potential. She works with individuals, drug and alcohol treatment teams, and the addiction professionals looking to advance their knowledge base. She has over 20 years of experience working with drug, alcohol, and food addictions. Dr. Cali Estes is a #1 best-selling author. She was also featured in a riveting documentary about addiction, Gone Too Soon, the story of Emily Cooley. Dr. Estes is more than a sober coach. She has a background in clinical and personal psychology, addictions, and forensics, and has been featured on NBC, CBS, CNN, Don Lemon, MSN, Dr. Drew's podcast, The Washington Post, Fox News, Angeles Times, and many more. And now she's here to join us on Richer Soul. Let's meet our guest. Welcome to Richer Soul, Cali Estes. It's great to have you join us today.
Thanks. I'm so glad to be here.
And I'm excited to have the conversation. So we always start at the beginning. What was it like when you were growing up, and how much did your family and school teach you about money?
Oh, this is such a good one because I grew up in a family where I was told we don't have money for that, whatever that was that you wanted. And it could be new clothes, new sneakers, a trip to France, a trip to the shore. It didn't matter. The answer was we don't have money. We're not that family. So we were always taught the limiting belief that you don't go to college, you don't buy nice things, you buy used cars because we're middle class. So when I was 14, I knew I didn't want to be middle class, and I knew I could crash that limiting belief system. So I set out to do that and deconstruct it. In school, it wasn't much different because I couldn't participate in a lot of things because I didn't have the money. So I was in French club, but I couldn't go to France with French club because I didn't have the $1,000 or $2,000 it was to go. So I found myself joining activities where I could fundraise to go places and do things. So I ended up joining Band Front because they traveled and they gave you an option to be able to earn your way to go as opposed to having your parents pay. So that's how I grew up learning about money.
Interesting. So what happened at 14 that turned that switch?
I had always been like that. But at 14, we were sitting at the dinner table, and this is in my book. We were sitting at the dinner table, and my stepdad had a dirty shirt on with holes in it because he was a welder. And my mom had her scrubs on. She was a film file clerk. And we were eating Kentucky Fried Chicken. And I remember that. And my stepdad said to me, "What's your plan?" And I said, "I got 4 bucket list items." And he goes, "Okay." And I said, "I'm going to make $1 million. I'm going to buy a house by the beach because we lived, 2.5, 3 hours from the beach. I'm going to get a brand new car off the showroom floor, and I'm going to find myself a real man." And he laughed at me and he said, "Good luck." I said, "Watch me." And I knew I had to set out to prove that. And by 31, I had all 3. The man came at 34. So I knew I was always different at a young age.
Is that historically, like all the way back to very young age, that you just had this desire for success?
I knew I didn't want to be like my family. I knew I wanted no parts of that. And I grew up in a family where you marry the local boy and you move 3 doors down from mom and you make babies and that's what you do. And I wanted none of it. So I knew what they tried to sell me wasn't my life path. So I set out from an early age to figure out, how do I get out of here? How do I leave this town, leave these people, and go somewhere where I can be big? So I had always done that. And I've always worked. My first job, I was 10, making money. And I would hustle and put it away to get myself out of there.
And that's cool that you actually did that and you were successful. So after high school, how did you continue to achieve the success, get the $1 million and the house at the beach and buy the new car?
Well, I was homeless, obviously, because I left home, had nowhere to go. And then I tried to go to school, but I learned that when you're 21 and you're 19 and all that fun stuff, you're trying to apply for colleges, you have to have your parents' income, which I didn't have. So I struggled to get in, and I went to community college. Then I went and learned massage therapy, and I put myself through college doing massage, because you can make 45, 50 an hour as opposed to, waiting tables or what have you. So I did that, and I got my bachelor's, and then I figured out a way to get my master's degree for free on an assistantship. And when I did that, I was like, okay, now I changed my income bracket. And once I did that, I was able to do more things. And then one day I said, I'm done. I picked up my stuff. I moved to Texas, and I couldn't get a job. And I said to a friend of mine, let's go into business. And he said, what do you want to do? I said, let's start a fitness company. So we did. And we grew that fitness company, and it was me with no furniture sitting on the floor. And I turned over one of my plastic bins that I had my clothes in, put my computer on there, and that was my desk. And we successfully built from 0 to 4.1 million in 3 years, the largest in-home fitness company in the world. And then when the economic downturn hit, I had already bought the car. I'd already bought the house by the beach. I'd already done all that, made my million. I lost everything and ended up homeless. I had to start over. So long story short, I got back into my addiction field, which was my original, I guess I want to say love or passion, and restarted and plugged along to get myself back into where I was.
And that's interesting. What do you think was the reason behind your business success and to be able to grow that quickly?
Tenacity, not taking no for an answer. When something doesn't work, you figure out, what do I need to do to make something else work? A lot of people spend so much time on a business plan that when something goes wrong, they pull out their business plan and they say, well, that wasn't on the plan. And then they spend more time trying to figure that out. And then you have people that are so afraid of failure or somebody coming up against them that they don't just do it. I just do it. I'm like, you don't need a business plan. You need an idea. You need a passion. You need to go. If it doesn't work, reevaluate, go a different direction. So not everything I've done has worked, but when it doesn't work, I'm able to do adjust and go to the next thing. And I tell people, you have to be able to shift with what's going on, and you have to be able to change as you go.
So how did you learn to accept failure? I mean, a lot of people will hit a failure and they stop, or they just say it's never going to work.
Well, that's part of the problem. I mean, Stephen King got rejected how many times for his book, It? 300 some? How many times did Michael Dell get rejected? How many times did Bill Gates get rejected? Steve Jobs, all of them. You have to be able to take rejection because it just means you haven't found the right person for what you're trying to do. That's all. It's not a negative thing. People look at rejection like, oh, somebody doesn't like me, they don't like my product, I can't succeed. Not necessarily so. Rejection could be a competitor saying, I don't want you in my space, so I'm going to make it more difficult for you to get where you want to go. You have to be able to overcome that and go to the next level.
And that's very true. You get back up, you try something else. Failure is nothing more than an experiment, and the result isn't what you wanted, so try a different experiment.
Mm-hmm, exactly.
What got you back into the addiction area?
I'm really good at it. It wasn't my first choice. It found me versus me finding it. And I wanted to be an FBI agent when I was young. And I did my internship, and you'll know this because you're up that direction, at SCI Rockview by Penn State. And I was the first female to work at an all-male medium security prison. And I had wanted to do FBI work, and they put me with a counselor in the addiction side. And I said, this is going to be boring, and I don't want to do it. And he turned out to be an ex-CIA agent, which was phenomenal because I learned body language, and I learned how people talk through how they stand and how they move. And I learned when somebody's lying to me. Well, if you know anything about addiction, 9 times out of 10, they're lying to you all the time. So when I have a client in front of me or on Skype or FaceTime, I can look at them and within 5 seconds tell you if they're lying. So I'm very, very good at what I do. So I got back into it because I know my success rate I know I can help, and I know I can teach other people to help other people.
So what is it that you do that creates such a great success rate?
I'm very different. I get to the root cause of the problem quickly. So as opposed to most treatment centers or treatment styles where they say addiction is your problem, I say your addiction is your solution to a problem. What's your problem? I do it backwards. Instead of saying, let's talk about your addiction to alcohol, your addiction to meth, your addiction to sugar, I go, why are you using it? What's the underlying reason? And I want to talk about that. I don't want to talk about the addiction because that's your coping mechanism. That's how you're dealing with life stress or trauma or whatever it is. So I uncover that. Once I uncover that, my next question is, what's your purpose and passion in life? And a lot of people go, what? What do you want to do? Are you happy in your career? 9 times out of 10, you're unhappy in a different sector. It could be career. It could be life. It could be marriage. If you're not happy, you're going to use substances, whatever they are. So my job is to figure out what your purpose and passion is, have you go for it, and then the drug addiction automatically goes down.
That kind of reminds me of a study because during the Vietnam War, a lot of the soldiers who were in Vietnam were using a tremendous amount of drugs. And yet when they left Vietnam, 9 out of 10 stopped using drugs. And they couldn't figure out what was it that made it different. And there was a study called the Rat Park study. I'm sure you're familiar with it. If you could share that with our audience, that would be awesome.
Yes. So the Rat Park study there was a theory going back and forth between a few scientists. And one said that if you give rats cocaine, that's all they're going to do until they have a heart attack and die. And another person said, but what if you did something different? So they put these little vials of cocaine-laced water in the cages and then plain water. And the rats would continually hit the cocaine-laced water because they liked it. It pinged their brain. It made them happy, increases serotonin, dopamine, all that fun stuff. Well, then they said, what if we built a rat park, like a big amusement park for rats? Fun things to do, things to keep them engaged, make them happy, give them natural serotonin, dopamine. Will they still take the cocaine? So it was divided. Half the scientists said, yes, they're going to take the cocaine until they die. They're going to have a heart attack. The other half said, we're not so sure. So that's what they did. They put the big park in. They kept the regular water and the cocaine-laced water. And what happened was, little bit by little bit, all the rats started to play a rat park. And they forgot about the cocaine-laced water. So it showed us that we reach for substances when we're bored, when we're uncomfortable, and when we're unhappy. But when we're happy and we have something to do and a function, we don't reach for those drugs anymore. And they said, what if we could recreate this in humans? What if humans were happy, if they enjoyed their life? Well, it's kind of hard to enjoy your life if you get up and you got kids and it's, fixing breakfast, fixing lunches, fixing clothes, rushing them to school, dropping them off, rushing to work. You're at work for 8.5 hours a day on average or more. Then you have to get back in the car, go pick up kid 1, take them to soccer, pick up kid 2, take them to cheerleading. Then you have to go home, fix dinner, go pick up kid 1, pick up kid 2. I mean, it's 8 o'clock at night before you sit down. That's miserable. But that's the life we say is the American dream. Well, now we see people using drugs to get through that. Alcohol, Xanax, Ritalin, mommy's little helpers, whatever, because it's such an amazing amount of time. There's no downtime. There's no relaxing. It's not fun anymore. And day in, day out, it's rat park without the fun. So theoretically, if you had less stress and more fun, you wouldn't reach for those items.
And is that what you have found as you worked with your clients, that when they are having more fun and they're happy and they have purpose, I assume the drug addictions go away?
Exactly. They go down to almost non-existent unless a stressor hits. So I have a signature program called Sober on Demand, and I work with the client intensely for 3 to 10 days where we get to the bottom of why they're using what they're using and what about their life they don't like. And I just worked with a client down here in Miami. He flew in from New York to see me, and we worked for four days. And on day 1, I learned right away he's in the wrong industry. The job he has does not suit his personality. It doesn't make him feel good. It doesn't do anything for him except pay the bills. And I said, what else could you do? And long story short, within 4 days, he's created a nonprofit and flew to Africa. And he's so happy because he can do his other job 20 hours a week and then do what really makes him happy. So he still pays the bills, but at the same time, he's fulfilling his inner cup. He's filling himself up with happiness. And he hasn't had a drink. And that's been 5 months. And this is somebody who drank for 20 years. So it's all about what makes you happy. What do you want to do? And why are you doing what you're doing now?
So what are generally the underlying issues? In this case, it was a work mismatch. What do you find are the main themes that people are dealing with that you help them overcome?
There's trauma, of course, baggage from past relationships, childhood trauma, mommy love me issues, daddy love me issues. Of course, there's all of that. But then there's a unfulfillment of life. Like there's supposed to be more. What am I doing? Why am I not doing enough? Or why am I bored? Or I chose this life and now I want something different, but I'm stuck. So those are the main themes of people that I see. Add in there a little bit of divorce, a little bit of domestic violence, and a lot of unfulfillment, and that's what I get.
And you know what? It's funny because I don't think anyone talks about the unfulfillment as a reason. They talk about the past trauma or, an event like a divorce, but nobody talks about unfulfillment as a reason to be addicted.
That's unfortunate because it's a huge piece of why people gravitate toward drugs and alcohol. And everyone's trauma. And I don't agree with Gabor Mate. Not everything is trauma. Most of my clients are not trauma. They just feel like they should be doing something else, or they haven't completed enough, or they don't feel what they set out to do was as fulfilling as it sounded. So, give you an example. I have a client whose dad's an attorney, and he said, this is what you're going to do. You're going to be an attorney, make a lot of money, take over the firm. Well, at 36 years old, he doesn't want to be an attorney. And that was his chosen career path. And he's married, and he came to me for doing opiates. And he said, I hate being an attorney. I push papers, I look at things, and I hate it. He's a business attorney. And I said, what do you want to do? And he goes, I want to counsel people. I said, oh, okay. That's as far from being an attorney as it gets. So I said, what do you need to do? And he told me, and he was so excited, and he was going to plan his exit strategy. And his father said, you will not have an inheritance as soon as you do that. You're out. So his whole life purpose was not his. His dad hijacked his entire life purpose. So I had to sit down with the dad and say, why would you do this to somebody? You're hijacking what he wants to do. You're stunting his growth. You're the reason he's using drugs, period. You won't give him permission to do what makes him happy. So he's just going to continue using drugs until he kills himself. That's the direction we're going. So those are some of the things I do where I have to intervene and have those hard conversations with parents that think they're doing the right thing when they're not.
Yep. Parenting issues cause a lot of trouble.
Oh, yeah.
I've learned that over the years. And so you've actually dealt with highly successful people, people who are running large companies, sports figures, people in the, I guess, Hollywood or wherever. You're dealing with high profile people, and yet they still have underlying issues.
The higher the profile, the more the underlying issue. Let's put it that way.
What's the reason for that?
There's many different reasons. One is they have a lot of yes people. Mm-hmm. So if they want something, there's a lot of people who want to be around celebrities because they're starstruck. So if you're hanging around, let's say Charlie Sheen, because he's not a client of mine. And Charlie, he's tiger's blood and winning and wants to get high. And he says to you, here's $10,000, go get me a hooker and some methamphetamine. If you want to be in Charlie's circle, you do what Charlie says, period. Now, if you say no, he will fire you and find someone else who will. So a lot of these people just say yes because they're starstruck. They want to be in that camp of that celebrity. And that's how we end up with deaths like Whitney Houston and Michael Jackson. Too many yes people.
And the same thing happens in corporate America. The C-suite is surrounded by yes people. Otherwise, you don't have a job.
Mm-hmm.
which is a shame. So you're working on some new things. There are a variety of different kinds of addictions. I'd love for you to just touch on what are some of the different addictions, and then we'll talk about the new one that you're working with.
I do everything from drugs, alcohol, sex, gaming, gambling, all the way up to internet addiction, shopping addiction, social media addiction, porn addiction, all of that, including food addiction and sugar addiction.
And I'm assuming that the underlying causes of any of those are probably the same. It's just how that person copes, correct?
Exactly.
Okay.
Depending on the person and what they're exposed to. So for me, sugar was my drug of choice because that's what I was exposed to. There was no alcohol in the house. Had there been alcohol, I might have been an alcoholic. But there was no alcohol. There was no drugs. But food, and sugar specifically, tons of it. So if you were sad, you ate. If you were happy, you ate. If you were angry, you ate. So I learned eating is what you do whenever you have an emotion. Now, my husband was exposed to cocaine at 16 because he was cooking, a line cook, and he would do 16-hour days, and their thing was do a line to get through the workday. So he was exposed to coke, and he became addicted to cocaine. So it's a lot about what you're exposed to, and then also what's socially acceptable within your peer group.
That makes a lot of sense. Before we dig into the food addictions, how do you help people find their purpose? Because one of the things I've noticed is that a lot of people don't have clarity around purpose, and it's difficult for them. They know what they don't want to do, but they struggle to figure out what it is that they really want in life.
Mm-hmm. So this is easy. So the first thing I have them do is create a bucket list. Give me 10 to 20 things you want to do before you die. That's the first thing. The second thing is I have them create a vision board and an action plan. So a vision board can be as simple as getting one of those dry erase boards and a marker and writing things up there that you want. It could be as complex as going to the craft store and getting a big backdrop and glitter and pom-poms and all kinds of fun stuff and building yourself a vision board. It all depends on the person. The goal is to pick the things you want to accomplish and put them up there. So let's say you want a house, a car, a job. I'm going to say get specific. What does the house look like? Is it a townhouse? Is it a 5-bedroom? Is it a condo? Where is it? I'm going to ask those questions. Is it by the water? Is it by the sea? Is it in the mountains? We'll do one by one by one. Same thing with the car. Do you want a Honda, a BMW, or a Ferrari? That's totally different. You know, you can't tell me you want to work at Starbucks and sell coffee and buy, a McLaren. That's not going to happen. So I want to make sure your goals are in alignment with what you want. That's the first thing. Then we go through, I do a Myers-Briggs personality test with them, which gives them, best careers for them. And then I say, how are we going to get from here to achieving some of those goals on the vision board? What do you want first? What's the first goal? And how do we get there? And then I put them in the race to do that. And I coach them along the path. And then every time they get something, we take it off the vision board and put something else up there. So it's very simple. Let's say you get the BMW. Okay, great. What's next? What's the next thing you want? So you're always striving for something. You're always looking for the next thing. And that keeps them plugged in. It keeps them going. It keeps them engaged. And it keeps them motivated.
So I'm wondering, once people get the BMW, and I've kind of gone through this in my life, it doesn't, so to speak, bring the happiness. You think it will, but it doesn't. So how do you balance that out?
Well, the question becomes, it's not just the BMW, it's how you got there. Did you enjoy the process to get there? How did you earn the BMW? Remember my things I wanted to do when I was 14. One was to go and buy a brand new car. Well, when I had the fitness company and I made it with my own money, that was so awesome to be able to walk in and go, wow, I did this. It wasn't just I got the car. It was I got this car, and it was a Dodge Charger SRT 8 the minute it came out, cherry red, brand new. And I also bought a Jeep Wrangler. I did it myself with the money I made from the company I started. So the car, it wasn't the car that fulfilled me. It was the ability to make that purchase that fulfilled me. So it depends on what the person's looking for and what fulfills them.
And it's different for everyone.
Exactly.
So you've kind of shifted gears and added food addiction into the things that you treat. Why did you decide to do that?
Well, food addiction is my drug of choice. So I've always had a problem with it. And I noticed two things. People coming out of treatment are given garbage to eat in treatment. For some reason, we have vending machines, we have Monster, we have coffee with sugar, Snickers bars, honey buns, what have you. And they come out and they say, you can't take everything away from me. And I look at them and I go, you're going to get fat, you're going to get cranky, and you're going to have mood swings, and everyone's going to think you're bipolar, and then you're going to end up using and go back in treatment again. All because of the sugar. So I started educating people coming out of treatment and some treatment centers on how to make the shift of making healthier decisions, having a group on food, having better choices, and people started to feel better. And as they felt better, they not only felt better, but they also relapsed less. That means they reached for the drug of choice less because their brain was clear, their body felt good, and they weren't uncomfortable. From there, I decided, let's also add in people whose drug of choice is food, because there's a lot of people who do food. Because if you think about it, if you go to the store to buy wine, and we pushed our shopping cart to the cash register, and there's 10 bottles of wine in there, someone's going to say, oh, are you having a party? Well, if they're for us, we're going to feel guilt, shame, and remorse instantly. But if we're coming through the checkout line and we have chips and pizza and cake and all kinds of nonsense, most people don't think anything of it. They think, oh, you have kids. And that's it. So it's way more socially acceptable to be a food addict than it is an alcoholic or a drug addict.
And that's very true. I've heard you say that sugar is like heroin.
Yes.
Why do you say that? And what's the reasoning behind it?
So sugar and heroin are almost the same chemical makeup if you look at their chemical compound. They also have the same detox. So if you're detoxing off of heroin, you have headaches. Same with sugar. You have insomnia. Same with sugar. Sometimes you have nausea and stomach cramping. Same with sugar. You have restless leg syndrome. You can't sleep. You feel uncomfortable. You feel like your skin is crawling. You have a headache. And worst of all, you have brain fog. The exact same detox. Now, cocaine pings the brain the same as sugar. So it's as if you are pinging the brain like cocaine, the happy chemical, serotonin, dopamine, and then you're detoxing like heroin. So without all the amazing effects of cocaine and heroin. So I tell people sugar is the most addictive drug on the planet.
And is there a certain biology behind it, or is it just because it's so similar in composition?
Similar in composition, and then your body really, really likes it. Let's put it that way. For most people. Some people will say, I really don't like sugar. I like salt. And I'll say, okay, do you eat one handful of potato chips or do you eat the whole bag? Oh, I eat the whole bag. Well, now it's not just sugar. Now it's the chemicals in the food-like product that you're eating that are causing your tongue to palpitate to want more. So McDonald's is one of the biggest examples I tell people, do not eat there. I'm going to get sued one day from them because they put so many chemicals in their food to make you want more. They're causing you to be addicted to their food. So if you look at your body's chemistry, when you ingest what they call a hamburger, the stuff that's in there goes into your body and your body goes, I want more instantly. I need more. That's why you start to crave McDonald's and you crave Wendy's and Burger King and not so much Taco Bell, but it's the same concept.
It is. And it's not just fast food restaurants. Probably the majority of food that's in a supermarket that is processed in all those fancy looking boxes is designed for the same thing, to get you to keep buying and eating more.
Correct. Yep. And it's even worse. If you go and look at the cereal aisle, there's top 5 brands that own the cereals. That's it. It's not like you look at all those boxes and you think, wow, there's a lot of cereal companies. There's 5. That's it. And each one of those, when you flip the box over, there's nothing healthy in there for you, unless you're buying an organic, non-GMO oatmeal, which some people are even allergic to oatmeal. Cocoa Pebbles and Lucky Charms are not food. And this is what we give our kids for breakfast. So we say, here you go, big bowl of Lucky Charms, straight sugar and chemicals. And then we give you milk, which is full of morphine and more sugar. And then we send you to school. And when you can't sit still, we tell you you have ADD and we have to medicate you. That's the craziness of our industry and of our society. Now there's something wrong with your child. No, you fed your child garbage. And your child can't sit still and can't focus because of the sugar. And then the sugar wears off. And my goodness, they have a temper tantrum and they're angry and they're irritable. And then once again, we blame the child.
When it's mom and dad and the food that they're giving them. And honestly, I've noticed that with my kids, that most people fed their kids a ton of sugar.
Yep.
And it was just incredible. My kids don't really drink soda. We don't have a ton of that type of stuff in the house. We don't ban everything to say you can never have it, but it's also everything in moderation. And we tend to cook real food as well, so we don't have those ongoing issues. And I think it makes a big, big difference over time.
It does. And I grew up in a household that had garbage because my mother did not like to cook. And my father was very abusive. So she would make hot dogs for dinner and cream chip beef on toast. That was dinner. Or the Hungry Man dinner. And then breakfast was cereal. And it usually was garbage cereal. And even Cheerios are garbage. So it was Cheerios. And then it was bananas with sugar, things like that. So I grew up with horrible, horrible eating habits. Most of my teeth had rotted out by the time I was 14. And from there, I was a foodie because that's what we ate and that's what I liked. And then my mom remarried my stepdad and he tried to cook healthy and it was like pulling teeth with me, literally. So that was tough. But if you look at my blood work, it's really bad. And it's bad because I spent the first 14 years of my life eating garbage, not working out, being overweight, having a lot of health problems, and nobody corrected that. And my husband grew up eating super, super healthy. They ate dinner tonight every night together, and it was always like a meat and a vegetable and a starch. All of their lunches were healthy. I mean, my lunch was Campbell's soup and ho-hos every day, or bologna sandwiches. So look at his blood work, and he used cocaine for almost 30 years. His blood work's perfect. Mine looks like it's a disaster because of the food, not because of drugs. So a lot of people say to me, they're like, well, drugs are so bad. And I'm like, hold up. If you're eating sugar, get your blood work done. And tell me what that looks like. And don't tell me how bad heroin and cocaine are until you look at your own blood work if you've had sugar most of your life.
And I think that was what happened in this country. And I don't know exactly when, but they went against fat. And so everyone started eating more sugar because you couldn't eat fat. And it really messed up diets for an entire generation. It seems like now they're finally admitting, oh, yes, you can have high protein, higher fat, low carbs, and it's actually healthy.
I think that was in the 80s. I remember right around 85, 86, Olean came out. And it was like, you had these potato chips that had fake fat and you had fake butter. I can't believe it's not butter. And all of a sudden, everybody was putting this on everything. And Diet Coke was huge. You know, it was Diet Coke, diet everything. But now you can have Coca-Cola without the sugar. It's just chemical. So there was like the surgence of that. Like, you know, now you can be healthy and thin with a Diet Coke and an Olean potato chips. But we started to realize it caused a lot of health problems. And then from there, it became, you know, let's get healthy again. But people don't realize the hidden sugar. If you buy yogurt or if you buy pasta sauce, it's full of sugar. And people are shocked. They're shocked there's sugar in bread. You know, when I take my clients shopping, I tell them we're going to shop around the outside of the grocery store. Going up and down the aisles is food-like product. If it's in a can, a jar, or a bag, it is not food, period. And if it has more than one ingredient, it is not food. It's a food-like product or what I call a dessert. So a lot of people are shocked when I say, you know, if it's 2 ingredients, forget it. You know, hummus is hummus. It should be chickpea and maybe salt. That's it. When you start getting all kinds of additives in there and you have flavored items such as cookie dough hummus, even though hummus is good for you, when you start adding flavors like cookie dough and chocolate and sugar, now it's not good for you. And people say, oh, it's hummus. Well, it was hummus It was chickpeas in the beginning, but it's got 20 ingredients now, half of which are sugar, and it's 30 grams of sugar for a tablespoon. Forget it. That's not healthy. But our brain goes, but it's hummus. Yeah, but it's not hummus anymore. So it becomes a food-like product. And that's hard to teach people because when you go to the grocery store, they put a lot of products together. You see this with milk. You'll see fat-free milk, almond milk, cashew milk, chocolate milk, all in the same row. And if you look at the different items, from almond milk all the way up to chocolate milk, it's completely different. But yet, that's milk. So people go, well, if it's in the milk aisle, it's good for you. The chocolate milk is as good as almond milk. Well, that's not accurate, but it's sitting there. So it's also very misleading where things are placed in the grocery store itself.
Well, and they are paid for shelf placement. So their job
Correct.
is to move product and move the product that they are paid the most to move. So that is their goal, and they're very good at achieving that. Today's episode is sponsored by Profit Comes First. Profit is good. It's the fuel that allows you to live the life of your dreams. Too often, business owners focus on the part of the business they love and ignore the most important part, the bottom line, that makes everything else possible. I've heard many of them say looking at spreadsheets and figures and their financial statements is akin to a root canal. It doesn't have to be that way. It can be more like a bowl of ice cream. And that's what you can learn at Profit Comes First, where we help you implement systems to ensure the money is always there to pay taxes, make payroll, and of course, to reap profits. It's the fuel that allows you to live the life of your dreams. What would you do if you had the time, money, and ability to do anything you wanted? How well would you sleep at night knowing everything is covered? Learn more at ProfitComesFirst.com and schedule a no-obligation call to see if it's right for your business. So how do you determine if you have a food addiction versus just overeating?
So overeating would be your portions are too big. So first thing I have you do is go from a normal plate to a salad plate and do a smaller portion because the size of your stomach is the size of your fist. If you're eating more than that at a meal, you're already overeating, period. Now, from there, I have questions. So my questions go like this. If you are obsessing over food, meaning you're thinking about what you're going to eat at dinner and it's lunchtime, or you make a detour on the way home to stop by your favorite donut shop that's 20 minutes out of the way, that's a problem. If you find yourself, instead of buying one donut, you have to buy 12 and eat all 12 in the car and then hide the box so your wife doesn't know, that's a problem. If you find yourself binging on certain foods and you don't know why, that's a problem. And also, I have them keep a food mood journal. So if you're feeling sad, you put it in there, what you ate, where you are, and what you did. And then we can go back a week later and take a look at your food mood journal, how you felt, where you were, what you were doing. And we can correlate your mood to your food. So if you're sad and eating, that's a problem. And a lot of people who have food addiction won't just overeat, they'll binge eat, and then they'll feel guilt, shame, and remorse. And that'll all be in the journal. And then we know you have a food addiction problem.
That makes sense. So you've launched a new certified food addiction coach program. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Sure. So we did a food addiction coaching program to teach people how to be food addiction coaches. Because we have a lot of people out there doing drugs and alcohol coaching, but they're not working with people who become food addicts. And these are either people that have recovered from drug and alcohol that are now turning to food, or people whose first drug of choice was food. So it teaches the person who wants to be the coach how to get to the bottom of the problem, how to solve the problem, and how to use 45 exercises in a workbook that we created to help the client overcome their issues surrounding food and stuffing and pushing their emotions down.
That's awesome. Thank you. As I'm thinking about business owners and companies, these days everybody is working more and more. And yet when you go into the average office, there really aren't healthy choices to eat. And even if you want to run out for lunch, there aren't healthy choices to eat. Most people tend to be eating garbage at work, which means that their work probably suffers considerably for their employers. Have you ever worked with employers to revamp or at least advise them on how to create a more healthy food environment in the office?
Yes, I have said to employers and corporations, there's a reason Google has the happiest employees, because the food choices are different. There's choices for exercise. There's things they can do to decompress from their job. They keep them plugged in. The more downtime you have and the better food choices you have, the better clarity you have. So, for example, having vending machines would be a no-no. You don't want to have Snickers bars and Monsters and Red Bull and all of those things that you think are helping, because all they're going to do is crash your employee. And I say, let's find other alternatives, such as kombucha bars or having fruit and nut stations. One company, we put in a whole flavored water station so that they could come out of their desk and they would be able to come over, and there would be lemon water and watermelon water and all kinds of infused water. And then every Thursday, they brought in a massage therapist that did chair massage. So things like that can really make the employees' experience different and make them not only want to come to work, but also make them productive.
And did you see differences in outcomes in that particular company? Were you able to measure that or not yet?
Oh, yeah. We were able to see they had less sick time, so less calling out, more productivity, more people got more done, because instead of hiding at their desk eating the garbage that they didn't want their coworkers to see them eating, they would come out, because we put big bins in that had fruits and nuts in them like they do at the day spa. So they could come out and they would get a little container full of nuts and then go back to their desk. So it encouraged them to not only socialize and discuss project, but also get out of their desk and go for a walk. And it became more of a team environment.
So one of the things I've noticed, because I've done a lot of entertaining, is you need to have the appropriate size container. So if you give people an 8-inch plate versus a 12-inch plate, they will naturally take less on an 8-inch plate. You give them a 12-inch plate, they'll pile it high. Same thing if you give them small containers to take fruits and snacks versus a 12-ounce cup, in which case it doesn't matter how healthy it is. It's overboard.
Exactly.
So why do most diets fail?
No, diets are not good for you. It needs to be a lifestyle change. A diet implies that you're going to stop the bad behavior for a period of time, achieve a result, and then reward yourself by achieving the result by engaging in the bad behavior. So when I say it this way, most people say this makes sense. And here's what I say. Let's say you're shooting heroin, right? And that's causing you to have problems with your marriage, problems with your job. You can't function. You don't have any money. And you go, I'm going to stop shooting heroin for 6 months, get a job, make money, do all the right things, make my wife happy. And then when that 6 months is up, I'm going to go back to shooting heroin. People are going to look at you like you're crazy. You're doing that with a diet. It's the exact same thing. I'm going to eat healthy for X amount of days, and then I'm going to eat bad again. And I always say, why? What's the point of that? Why bother stopping for 6 months to go back to it? Start to make a lifestyle change and do one thing at a time. Maybe it's taking diet soda away and sugar drinks first. Nothing else, just sugar drinks. Then maybe it's putting sugar in a coffee. Take that out. Try something else. And then maybe instead of having 2 donuts at 2 o'clock, you have a banana and a handful of nuts. So it's basic changes. And then you add walking or exercise. And it kind of goes from there. So I always say lifestyle change.
And that's true. And that's why I think the word diet has become so bad. You have to, I mean, we're all on a diet regardless of what it is. And you do have to create a lifestyle that you have to find foods that you like and enjoy that are also healthy. And there are a tremendous amount of them out there. You just have to experiment and figure out what works for you, because we all have different tastes and different desires from that.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
So what do you do when people fall off the path? You know, they've done well, they've kind of overcome their addiction, but then they fall off the path.
That happens all the time. And I always say, let's get back up, back on the path, back on the horse and ride. And let's not worry about the fact you fell off the path. Let's figure out what caused the fall off and then get back on and go. And less on guilt, shame, and remorse, and more on conquering the next objective.
And that makes a lot of sense. Are pills ever the answer?
No. Pills are just a quick fix. It's the equivalent of me not doing heroin and now I'm going to be stuck on methadone for the rest of my life. Well, methadone is a great detox protocol, but to use that for the rest of your life, you're just switching out one low-grade opiate for the next. At some point, you're going to have to address the issues you have underlying why you're doing it.
And why don't most addiction programs actually look at the underlying issues?
It takes a lot of time and a lot of personal touch to do that. And a lot of these treatment centers are big warehouses. You come in, you get 4 sessions of therapy in a 30-day window. If you're lucky and you got a decent place, you'll get 8 sessions of therapy. That's 8 hours in 30 days. That's not nearly enough to get to the root cause of your problem. And you're basically ushered from group to group to group. People read from a book. People talk about themselves. There's no customized program. If you actually had customized programming, whether it was tailored completely to you, you would see a higher result. That's why I do the Sober on Demand concierge program, completely tailored to the client.
And that makes sense. What happens to the people who can't afford something like that, though?
We have all levels. So if they can't afford me, we have recovery coaches that are hourly, and they can have a couple hours here and there, a couple hours a week, a couple hours a day, whatever works for them to get to the root cause. But if you're not going to figure out why you do it, you're never going to stop. And I always ask people how much money they spent on drugs, alcohol, whatever the drug of choice is, and it's hundreds of thousands of dollars. So when people say, well, I can't afford you, I always say, you just spent that money on the drug dealer last month. Guaranteed. If you're doing heroin, you're probably at $120 a day, 7 days a week. That's the average habit. Cocaine's even worse, $160 to $250. And that's 3-4 times a week. So if you're spending that kind of money, you can afford me. And you can definitely afford to do this one time and get through it.
We didn't touch on this, but I'm assuming cigarettes and now vaping, same issues, same underlying causes?
Well, cigarettes are more psychological, as is vaping. The first 3 days of the nicotine withdrawal. And then it's all hand to mouth. Then it becomes similar to a food addiction where you need to have something in your mouth. And it can be chapstick, it can be a drink, it can be a cigarette, anything. So I actually break people differently with vaping and cigarettes than I do with anything else. And I'll share this with your listeners. I ask them how many cigarettes they smoke a day or how many hits they take on a vape. And then they put that in a baggie. So let's say they smoke 10 cigarettes a day. So the baggie number 1 has 10 cigarettes. Baggie number 2 has 9 cigarettes and a lollipop. And then 8 and 2 lollipops all the way down to 0. And I tell them, go outside like you would your normal break, pick either the lollipop or the cigarette out of the bag. And if it's a lollipop, you take it outside just like you normally would a cigarette. Take the wrapper off, put it in your mouth, put it between your fingers just like you're smoking it, and hang out there. And by the time you're done, you won't have any nicotine withdrawal. And it's purely all psychological around having to have a lollipop in your mouth. And it breaks them every time. And I have them do the same thing with the vape. The problem with people with a vape, though, is they got used to sitting at their desk, doing their work, and smoking a vape. And there's no more going outside for air, taking a break. There's no more of that. So they have to get back to used to, I can't smoke in the house. I can't be on a webinar smoking a vape. And it takes a little bit more thought, but they can break it as well.
And I've heard one of the things with smoking and why it helps some people is because you're taking deep breaths and you're essentially, I mean, you're not exactly oxygenating yourself, but you are. And it's got psychological benefits from that as well.
Sometimes a lot of it has to do with people associate calming down with cigarettes, even though the opposite happens. It actually raises your blood pressure, raises your adrenaline, and makes you into the flight mode, as opposed to calming you down. But the ritual calms you down. That's why I tell them to do the lollipops, because it's the same thing.
It's the same ritual. What do you wish people would ask you about addictions, but never do?
How long is this going to take me? Because people always want the quickest fix. And I tell them it's a lifestyle change. You're signing up for a lifestyle commitment, as opposed to, signing up for Weight Watchers where you're going to pay your monthly fee and drop off and not do it, not go and blah, blah, blah. Once you start the process, you're not going to want to go back because you're going to love the life you have. But it's going to be a radical shift and things will change. I have couples that use together and then they get sober and hate each other and they don't even want to be together. It's like, that's going to happen. That could easily happen. So there's so many things that could happen once you go through this process.
It almost seems like going through the process can almost trigger the next addiction almost sometimes.
Well, it's not that way, a little bit reversed. So it's everybody's cross addicted. Once an addict, always an addict. So that means if you're a food addict, you get your food under control, there'll be something else that you're addicted to. Could be shopping, could be money, could be work. You'll find a way to fill that with something else. That's why you see what we call people switching drugs. They're not really switching. So somebody who's a sex addict and a coke addict gets the cocaine addiction under control, and next thing you know, they're buying strippers every weekend. Or somebody who's drugs and gambling. They get the drugs under control, now they're gambling. So it's not like, they switched addictions. It's a secondary. What's the next thing they go to? So I tell everybody, you have primary and secondary. So my primary was food, my secondary was diet pills. And then when I got both of those under control, it was work. So it's always something. My husband was heroin, and we got his heroin under control. It was tattoos. And he got his whole back tattooed. He's got a full sleeve. Half his chest is done. And his theory is, I could spend money on heroin or I could spend money on tattoos. Well, you're right. That's a way better addiction. So the addicted brain is always looking for the next thing. That's not going to stop just because you got sober, but you have to find an activity that's better for you than the one you were using.
So what are some good addictions?
Working out, exercise, learning how to cook healthy, walking, yoga. I tell people if you're an adrenaline junkie and you're into uppers, go jump out of a plane, go fly a plane, go do roller coasters, jet ski, anything along those lines that brings your adrenaline up naturally, go do it. So football, people that like to go to football games, go spend your money on a front row 50-yard line ticket as opposed to, drugs. Whatever you prefer that's healthier, go for it.
And that makes a lot of sense. Is there anything else that you wanted to share on the subject of addiction but didn't get a chance to?
No, I think that covers it all.
So based on our conversation, what's one action step people can take to move forward this week?
Start with a journal. Write down your food, your moods, and what you're doing. Because your food and your mood and your addiction are all tied. So if you're playing Candy Crush at 8 o'clock at night because your husband's not paying attention to you and your kids have driven you crazy, you checked out. Write that down and figure out what your pattern is and why you're checking out and why you're using whatever that activity is.
That's quite interesting. And I guess that's one of those things that you can now start to look at your spouse or your kids and see that they're checking out and saying, hey, how are you feeling? What's going on? To kind of pull them out of that. Very cool. it's time to learn the secrets of life. What's your secret to living an abundant life?
Ooh, I love that question. Abundance is, first of all, it's what you think it is. So it's not necessarily tons and tons of money. It could be love. It could be affection. It could be an outing that you enjoy. So living in abundance is being happy with what you have. And when you're not happy with what you have, creating more of what makes you happy.
And that's true. Abundance is not only about money, and it may not even have to be. There are many people who had no money who lived an abundant life. What did you learn later in life that you wish you would have learned sooner?
How to make money. I went through 4 companies before I figured out the sauce for the fitness company. And I wish I would have did that when I was 19 and not struggled, because I was homeless twice and lived in roach-infested apartments because I had no money and I didn't have a family that would pay for anything. So I wish I would have known that younger or had a mentor that taught me that.
So out of curiosity, is the sauce specific to that, or is the sauce a system that can be applied across?
A system that can be applied across. And I recently started actually teaching a marketing class on how to build a brand and market it and put it out there in a certain sequence that works.
Interesting. We'll have to have you come back on and talk about that.
I would love to.
What's one piece of advice you'd give to your younger self?
Ooh, weather the storm. Keep going. You'll get there. Don't listen to what the haters say. They hate themselves as well as you. And keep trucking.
All excellent things. If people would like to find you and connect and learn more about your programs, what is the best way for them to do that?
They can find me at a website called theaddictionscoach.com or caliestes.com. And that number is 1-800-706-0318. They can also find both my books on Amazon under my name, Cali Estes.
Cool. And I will put all of that in the show notes to make it easy for everyone to find them. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
I have to admit, I think we're all addicted to something. Maybe it's work, sugar, our smartphones, or the internet, or so many of the other addictions that we talked about. This week's action step was to start a journal of your addictions and include your food and your mood at the time. Seems like they're all tied together, and this helps bring about awareness. And once you start to see the underlying causes and you deal with them, the addictions start to go away. But remember, you have to replace that behavior with something else, and something good. Otherwise, you're trading one bad for another. If you have an addiction issue or know someone else who does, check out Dr. Estes' work. See if it's a good fit for you. Remember, the makers of food have worked really hard to make you want to keep eating them. That's why it's so hard to put down that bag of potato chips or that box of cookies. If you're still listening, you must have liked the episode, so please share it with a few friends. It can start a great conversation, and I'd appreciate it. You can also connect with me on Facebook. There's both a Facebook page and group for Richer Soul. What's preventing you from moving forward, and who are you putting on your team to help build the life you deserve? Taking no action creates a far worse outcome in life than trying something and failing. Can I help you achieve your goals through coaching and accountability? Just email. We can start with a short chat to see if we're a good fit for coaching. For many people, one session allows them to take a giant leap forward towards their dreams. You can reach me at rocky@richersoul.com. I'd love to hear how you're doing and how the information I've shared has helped. Thanks for listening. Have an abundant week.